Welcome to WYCD Wicked. That stands for What You Can Do. Going into the weekend with our stream. Got a lot of controversy, got a lot of stuff right on the edge of politics that has a lot of political implications. Beginning the show, let's just go through all of them. Why not? Andrew Callaghan, the creator behind Channel 5. He's got some pretty serious allegations against him. We're going to look at addressing those with a content creator that I'm surprised I haven't promoted on this channel yet. His name is Vaush. Great content creator. Then the OGL controversy. That's the open gaming license. And if you wonder what that has to do with politics, it's an interesting one, particularly in the reaction to it by the makers of a tabletop game called Pathfinder. And I will butcher the name of their company. I do apologize. I've heard other people say it. I try to say it. I don't say it correctly. We might be looking at the Second Iranian Revolution, a fascinating development in Iran. Lawrence O'Donnell breaks it down, and then surprise, late to the production of today's show, Keith Olbermann with a take on Merrick Garland that I am behind 100% and have been advocating for already. I think you'll like it. My man Keith. All right, let's get right into it. So Andrew Callaghan is the fella who makes Channel 5. Fantastic interviews on that channel. The content on that channel, in fact, has been one that lefties very much enjoy. I don't know where he stands myself, but I can make some inferences and assume that he is perhaps a leftist. Regardless, he's got some serious accusations. A woman accused him of coercing her into sexual intercourse. He has responded now in a way I find disappointing. And Vaush talked about it. I'd like us to look at what Vaush had to say. I also have some commentary to add, however, because I feel like the entirety of this situation is developing very much in the way we see this go over and over. And it leads to a misunderstanding of what the left wants. Let's get into it. And forgive the Vaush intro here.
I want to be totally forthcoming about this because this stuff is serious, okay? Accusations really Andrew Callaghan, host of the popular YouTube show Channel 5 and recent HBO documentary This Place Rules, is reportedly devastated by the mounting allegations of sexual misconduct he's currently facing. In a statement to TMZ, also keep in mind that according to Ethan Klein, the only statement that he's made up to this point was that like 20 accusations came out against him, and his only message was I had encounters with them, with no denial attached, which, probably isn't how I would go about rebuking claims of sexual misconduct against me if they were totally bogus. But
if they were bogus.
In a statement to TMZ, the 25-year-old video journalist lawyer danced around claims that Callaghan pressured women into having sex with him. Okay, statement to TMZ. Okay, so it goes back to the TMZ thing. A legal rep for the journalist tells TMZ Andrew is devastated he is being accused of any type of physical or mental.
Quick side note. TMZ does surprisingly good reporting on this stuff. They deal with celebrities of all sorts. That sometimes includes politicians. And in this case includes a prominent YouTuber / now HBO guy. They are made fun of often for their shady reporting, but the facts that they get are generally not wrong, and that's an important thing to understand. Sometimes it's inappropriate for them to air people's business. In this case, I don't believe so.
Coercion against anyone. Conversations about pressure and consent are extremely important, and Andrew wants to have these conversations so he can continue to learn and grow. Okay. That's not really a rebuttal.
Yeah.
Adding, while every dynamic is open to interpretation and proper communication is critical from all those involved, repeated requests for money should not be part of these conversations. For those unaware, Andrew got heat in TikTok after a woman named Caroline Elise recounted an alleged incident. Post direct knowledge. A source with direct knowledge.
Okay. Well, I just interrupted him. Here we go, though. So apparently this lady requested money from him beforehand. Do not jump to judgment here. Just hear it out.
Knowledge tells us Caroline requested money from Andrew, referencing the fat check he got from HBO for his documentary. She allegedly asked to be paid just minutes before the doc aired. We're told Andrew didn't pay up, and Caroline uploaded the TikTok a few days later, urging others to come forward, which is exactly what happened. So she asked for money, basically, like you give me money or I'll come out with this. If that's the case, that is that blackmail or is that extortion? Which one of those two isn't? You shouldn't do that. The text asking for money was posted on the H3 sub.
I believe that's the same thing. Blackmail.
From the Channel 5 subreddit. A friend of Caroline posted the text of her asking Andrew for money. Here it is. I don't really want a response from you because I already know your skewed version of what happened the last time I saw you. I just want you to know that seeing friends of mine promote your new show, which I'm not discounting came with a lot of hard work, hurts me in ways I wish you could feel sometimes. Anyway, if HBO cuts you a fat check and you in any way feel like helping contribute to the massive amount of therapy bills I've accrued due to the night you coerced me and my resulting trauma, my Venmo is blank, thanks. Okay, that seems like... So, to be clear, I think this is bad behavior. However, the existence of this message doesn't really lend any support for or against the claims made, I don't think. That's not even extortion, though. Actually, technically, you're right. It's not. Because the message here doesn't say...
Okay. So, this is a... Vaush does long-form videos. I left the link to the entirety of his breakdown of the situation in the description, as always. However, what he brought up there is what I want to jump on and examine. Whether it is or is not in line with the legal definition of blackmail or extortion or whatever, yeah, she was trying to get money out of the guy. It's what she was trying to do in that message. That does not change the facts. Did he extort her for sex? Or rather, did he pressure her inappropriately for sex? He hasn't denied it. I can't say for sure if he did or not. I'm sure there will be a whole yada, yada, yada. But whether or not she herself did something shady later, it does not change the fact that Andrew Callaghan may have done this. If he did it, her behavior, in other words, doesn't change that. We can't only seek justice for crimes that happen to perfect victims. That's no different than when police gunned down a black guy who wasn't resisting in any way, and then say, but he has a criminal record. But we found drugs on him. So what? Doesn't change the core issue. So, what should Andrew Callaghan do? What should you do as a potential viewer of Channel 5? Let me show you an example, or tell you about an example of someone whose content I enjoy, and to this day I still watch, who was part of the Me Too movement, in fact. As in, on the wrong side of that. Dan Harmon. Dan Harmon is the creator of Community, and he is the creator, he's the co-creator of Rick and Morty. I love both those. Those are very funny programs. He's also responsible for a podcast called Harmontown. I'm an avid listener of Harmontown, even though it's no longer in existence. But I listen to it all the time. And he, Dan Harmon, when he was making Community, sexually harassed a writer of his to the point where she had to leave the show because she couldn't be in that environment anymore. I can say that without fear of a lawsuit because Dan Harmon came out and said so on the podcast Harmontown. In fact, he did it in front of a live studio audience when he had the podcast. And he went into detail about what he did. He also went into detail about why it was wrong. He apologized profusely. The apology doesn't necessarily wipe away the harm he did. I can't answer that for the writer who had to leave that show, but it's the correct way to handle an accusation like this. I think Dan Harmon is one of the only people that understands why the left gets so riled up about this stuff, why people get so riled up about this stuff, and what it is that is being asked for. If you ever read about the lives of the saints, you will find that even saints aren't saints. The left isn't asking everybody to be perfect. The left is simply asking for the powerful to be held to account, for the powerful not to be immune from responsibility because they are powerful, whether they're powerful because they're popular or they're powerful because they are rich. All that is asked for is that these people be held responsible. In other words, when somebody's asking, should I still watch Channel 5? What they're asking is, should I still support this content creator knowing that he might use the power that my support of his content lends him to harm somebody else? Now, the twist is, with this being a lefty, he's advocating for positive things in our view. But is he going to use that to do something negative, to do the very thing so many people on the left are fed up with? The source of the Me Too movement, which, by the way, really kicked off after the election of President Trump, who has 27 credible allegations of abuse of women in one form or another. It's going to be determined by how Andrew Callaghan responds to this. Does he own up to it if it turns out he did do this thing? Again, it's early days in this. I am using this controversy to talk about a larger issue. And in full disclosure, I don't yet know if it's true or not. It's doesn't look good. I'll say that. How he responds to it should be what determines whether or not you continue supporting the man's channel. Does he own up to it? And perhaps, equally as importantly, does he take steps to ensure, or rather to demonstrate, that his continued wealth and popularity will not lead to somebody else getting put in that position. So far, his response, in my opinion, has not demonstrated that. But I'll keep watching, and if there is a significant update that changes my opinion of that, I will let you know. But the left is not looking for saints, just people that take responsibility for their actions. Well, in other somewhat, I suppose, social news, you may have heard of a little game called Dungeons and Dragons. Even if you're not a player yourself, I am. I'm a big fan. But even if you're not a player yourself, there is a story here that may have relevance to your life. Here's a fun fact about video games, of which D&D has been the inspiration for many. The video gaming industry is larger than the movie industry and the music industry combined. The video game industry, it's larger than I'll go bigger. It's bigger than the movie industry and the automobile industry combined. Isn't that wild? Kind of snuck up there because culturally not everybody does it. But that's a fact. The tabletop gaming industry has also exploded in popularity over the last 20 years. Even if you're not a gamer yourself, you might have heard of Critical Role and Matt Mercer. Arguably, one of the most financially successful things to arise out of the social media era. You might have heard of Brennan Lee Mulligan's Roll20. Not Roll20, Dimension 20. Point being, there are a lot of shows that work their way into the general public consciousness that have their origins in Dungeons and Dragons. And although it's less well known, they have their origins in something called the Open Gaming License. That's something Dungeons and Dragons put together, or the Wizards of the Coast, who make Dungeons and Dragons, put together a while back that essentially gives content creators, or rather the general public, the right to modify and display works with their game in it. Well, recently they decided they were going to make changes to that. I have actually some background with this. Once upon a time, I was going to do I did do, for a local news company, a tabletop RPG Let's Play, essentially. They call those real plays. But we didn't use Dungeons and Dragons. It was mostly just for funsies for a bunch of employees at a news station. But we didn't use that because there was very real concerns about the Open Gaming License and the fact that they could choose Wizards of the Coast to modify it at any time. Recently, that came to pass. Wizards of the Coast said it got leaked that they were going to make some changes, and that would have deeply affected the current content creators who rely upon that to make their living. Here is a fellow called No Nats 1 discussing it and a fascinating development that followed.
I'm actually making 3 videos in one day. This is absolutely bonkers, and just when I thought, well, no announcement today, nothing else to talk about, who else but Paizo comes out of nowhere, well, not nowhere,
the makers of Pathfinder, another tabletop
field,
RPG,
and just tackles us with the biggest announcement I've seen so far. So big that I read the first half of the post and just thought, I'm just going to read it out loud in the video, explain what I'm reading, because oh my god, this changes a lot. Paizo announces system-neutral open RPG license. This is insane. Khan, take your bell off, otherwise you're going to be jingling through the whole video. Paizo's not only saying, we're going to go do our own thing. Paizo's saying, we're going to remake the thing that everyone has been using. Paizo is going to make their own license. The same license that let them exist in the first place is now going to be made anew by them themselves. Let's dive into this open RPG article and see what we're looking at. For the last several weeks, as rumors of Wizards of the Coast new version of the
Before he gets into the details, just to go over what he's saying there. So that open, the OGL, the Open Gaming License. If you don't know what Pathfinder is, it's sort of a spin-off from D&D. But it became its own thing altogether. If you're a gamer, you might have seen Pathfinder, Wrath of the Righteous, Kingmaker. These were pretty well-selling games. It looks like they are going to take the place in society that Dungeons and Dragons, or rather Wizards of the Coast, had. Here it is.
Open game license began circulating among publishers and on social media. Gamers across the world have been asking what Paizo plans to do in light of concerns regarding WotC's rumored plan to deauthorize the existing OGL 1.0a. We have been awaiting further information, hoping that Wizards would realize that, for more than 20 years, the OGL has been a mutually beneficial license which should not and cannot be revoked. While we continue to await an answer from Wizards, we strongly feel that Paizo can no longer delay making our own feelings about the importance of open gaming a part of the public discussion. Paizo is literally saying, Wizards, it's been a week and a half, you had your chance. We are speaking up before you do. How does that look for Watson?
So, when they say it's been a week and a half, the initial leak happened a week and a half ago. And Wizards has chosen to be quiet on it. And then there was an additional leak showing that they were doing, and if you're a follower of this show, you'll recognize this, the old cover-up playbook. Wait for the public to forget about it, then do the thing they were planning on doing anyway. Just despicable behavior from a company I honestly had really admired up until this point. Absolutely despicable. So again, the second leak showed they saw the negative reaction to this. They have a product called D&D Beyond right now, which is subscription-based. Oof, always be nervous about that. It's subscription-based, and they essentially said, let's let this level out, see how subscriptions do, and then enact it. He's going to go into detail about what that open gaming license entailed, and rather, more importantly, or what changes were entailed, and importantly, what Paizo has done about it.
You know, how does that look for Wizards that their direct competitor gave them a week and a half and then said, enough is enough, we're stepping in? This line is incredible. We believe that any interpretation that the OGL 1.0 or 1.0a were intended to be revocable or able to be deauthorized is incorrect with good reason. We were there. Paizo owner Lisa Stevens and Paizo president Jim Butler were leaders on the D&D team at Wizards at the time. Brian Lewis, co-founder of Azora Law, the intellectual property law firm that Paizo uses, was the attorney at Wizards who came up with the legal framework for the OGL itself.
So you'll recall back to when I said I have some prior experience with this. That's fascinating. I was not aware that so much of Paizo was there for the creation of the open gaming license. However, looking at the words on paper and having the mistrust of capitalist forces that tends to crop up when you work in the media, it was read to be something that was not so clearly written that some nefarious individual couldn't later choose to interpret it in a way that would have put the production we were talking about at the time in jeopardy. What's fascinating here is that the Paizo is saying, no, that's what it's supposed to say. However, now he's getting to the however.
Paizo was literally there for every step of the OGL process being written. They also mentioned they've worked very closely with Ryan Dancy, who I said was the visionary who conceived it in the first place. I didn't say that. It says that on the page. I stole it. I'm stealing from you, Paizo. Sue me. It blows my mind that Paizo has the gall to say this. Paizo does not believe that the OGL 1.0a can be deauthorized ever. While we are prepared to argue that point in a court of law if need be, we don't want to have to do that, and we know many of our fellow publishers are not in a position to do so. Paizo is ready to throw down legal money to fight Wizards on this, knowing full well that smaller publishers don't have the funds to follow them into a legal battle. They're still willing to go mano-a-mano with the literal dragon to take it on, and I respectable. That's where I stopped reading, and everything here on is blind to me. As Paizo has evolved, the parts of the OGL that we ourselves value have changed. When we needed to quickly bring out Pathfinder 1st Edition to continue publishing our popular monthly adventures back in 2008, using Wizards language was important and expeditious. But in our non-RPG products, including our Pathfinder Tales novels, the Pathfinder Adventure card game, and others, we shifted our focus away from D&D tropes to lean harder into ideas from our own writers. By the time we went to work on Pathfinder 2nd Edition, Wizards of the Coast's open game content was significantly less important to us, and so our diviners, the Paizo diviners. And so our designers and developers wrote the new edition without using Wizards' copyright expressions of any game mechanics. While we still published it under the OGL, the reason was no longer to allow Paizo to use Wizards' expressions, but to allow other companies to use our Are you serious? What? There's actually no OGL? There's no OGL in PF2.
Okay,
what?
So it sounds like a lot of it's going into jargon there a little bit. What they're saying is they're not reliant on the whims of Wizards of the Coast, the makers of D&D, with the products they've made after a certain point. Meaning, they can do as they please with them. Meaning...
Is there actually no OGL usage or SRD usage in PF2? I thought a lot of what they used was technically considered SRD, but Paizo is very confident it's
meaning
not.
Wizards has it.
Which means we might see PF2 going completely unchanged.
Pathfinder
They'll just take the
SRD
out of any future publication and nothing changes, which is incredible. People don't need to learn a whole new game or slightly different game.
So that's really important because tabletop gaming as an entertainment medium, I suppose, it's like football, for example. And imagine every time there's a new edition, there's slight tweaks to the rules, etc., etc. But imagine every time you wanted to film a football game, you had to invent a whole new sport. So some standardization is important. It's not just important for the players, it's important for the fans. So that a fan can come in and understand what's going on. They don't have to, if they're going to appreciate a show, they don't have to learn a whole new system. Dungeons and Dragons was the gold standard. It was in fact just the standard. If you were going to do something, make an entertainment show that featured people playing a tabletop game and tell a story through that medium, you would by default use Dungeons and Dragons. Pathfinder is now setting itself up to fill that role because Wizards of the Coast got greedy. Let's see more of this man seeing this post for the first time and reacting to it because it's amazing to see, and this is what we could all have. This is the reaction we could all have if America did more socialist stuff.
Holy, that is the I want to say that is like the ballsiest thing I've ever seen someone say. Saying, yeah,
ballsy.
We don't actually need it. Joke's on you. We kept it in there to make you comfortable, Wizards, and so
Wizards of the Coast made like $150 million last year, so they are also challenging people that have a mighty legal team.
That other people can use our stuff. We believe, as we always have, that open gaming makes games better, improves profitability for all involved, and enriches the community of gamers who participate in this amazing hobby. Wow, that sounds like Wizards of the Coast 20 years ago. And so we invite gamers from around the world to join us as we begin the next great chapter of open gaming with the release of a new, open, perpetual, and irrevocable open RPG creative license, or orc license. I want an orc license! I want to be a licensed orc!
Just take a second to appreciate that. They're saying right off the bat this is irrevocable. They are taking steps to ensure that if later some capitalist scumbag takes over the company, it doesn't change that the content you made with it now is yours. And you could make content with it later. Still have it be yours. It is an open, irrevocable gaming license. That's the key part. It is irrevocable. As opposed to the old open gaming license, which was not. At least it wasn't written down that it was not. It was understood by most to mean that. But capitalism's a bitch. So, Pathfinder, stepping into the role. It gets a little bit better. Let's let him finish up.
The new Open RPG Creative License will be built system agnostic for independent game publishers under the legal guidance of Azora Law, an intellectual property law firm that represents Paizo and several other game publishers. Paizo will pay for this legal work. They're going out of their way to pay for it and write it and publish it, and it sounds like specifically lock themselves in. They're not pulling some loophole like Wizards has that they found in that legal document. They are going to write it airtight so that even if they do explode and become the next Hasbro 20 years from now, they can't go back on this, and I respect the hell out of that. We invite game publishers worldwide to join us in support of the system-agnostic license that allows all games to provide their own unique open rules reference documents that open up their individual game systems to the world. To join the effort and provide feedback on the drafts of this license, please sign up by using this form. Holy cow, this was real. Someone sent me this link, which I'll show just what it shows on screen right here. Someone sent me this like 6 hours ago, and I'm like, that's weird. That's a little sus. How does someone have this? Wow, it's actually real.
Okay, so let me just, let's talk a little bit about who Paizo is, the company. Are they perfect human beings? Remember our Callaghan conversation from earlier. Are they perfect? No. But remember also, we don't expect people to be perfect. We expect people to take responsibility. Let's look at their background a little bit. Here's the Wikipedia entry for Paizo. A little fact about the company. On October 14, 2021, an organization representing over 30 Paizo employees announced the formation of the United Paizo Workers, a labor union allied with the Communications Workers of America. By the way, if you're trying to start a union in your industry, at your place of business, first look and see if there is a larger union which can help. They will be delighted to help. Paizo employees announced plans to unionize as the United Paizo Workers under the Communications Workers of America, becoming the first such tabletop game company to have such a union. Hell yeah. The employees stated that recent issues related to managerial impropriety was a driver for the unionization effort. Paizo voluntarily agreed to recognize the union. So recall, we're not asking for saints. We're asking for people to take responsibility. That company did. I don't care what their managerial impropriety was before that moment, because they did the right thing in the moment. Paizo voluntarily agreed to recognize the union, allowing collective bargaining negotiations between the company and the union to commence. Paizo, you beautiful bastards. I'm a Pathfinder player now. That's how it is. That's my game. Here they are, meeting the president. That's a group of grassroots organizers. That's not all Paizo employees. The fella pointed out there is the Paizo employee. In that case, representing the union. Like a mother effing boss. That's how you do it. And that is, by the way, how socialists run things. That's how people who believe in collective bargaining run things. I think you're going to find that the great weakness of capitalism is the same weakness that occurs with royalty. When there's nobody around you to tell you you're wrong, you start believing your own hype. The people at Wizards of the Coast became convinced, from what I can see, that D&D was it. It was all there would ever be. And that they could demand whatever they wanted of people. And you know what? For a while, they might have been right. Except they overestimated how unique they were. There's 1,000 other tabletop gaming systems. Hell, I made one from scratch with my pals just to play a game. Paizo, the makers of Pathfinder, understand what was valuable about the open gaming license. Critical Role did more advertisement for tabletop gaming in general and Dungeons & Dragons specifically than that company, Wizards of the Coast, could have ever purchased. It made fans where none existed before. With the recent moves by the makers of Pathfinder, Paizo, I believe firmly they're going to take that role. And we should use this as an example of the power of people. Watch what happens with Pathfinder and with Dungeons & Dragons. Watch what happens. Over the next 10 years, I am of the belief that you will see Pathfinder overtake Dungeons & Dragons as the most popular tabletop gaming system. You might hear the words Pathfinder in your everyday life, like you used to occasionally hear Dungeons & Dragons in your everyday life. Nostalgic television shows will reference Pathfinder fondly because people have fond feelings towards Pathfinder, like they once did towards Dungeons & Dragons, when it was not associated with greed, but instead was associated with sitting around a table, laughing with your buddies. Excellent job to Paizo. Excellent coverage by No Nats 1. Fella, if you ever want to get into the politics game, I think you'd do a fine job. So, let me take you to Iran. Let me show you a picture of Iran, I believe, in 1978. Here it is. See that? Is that what you were expecting to see, I wonder? So often our our view of Iran is of this place that is controlled by religious zealots who force women to bundle up entirely, wear headscarves, hijabs, and whatnot. Look, if you're a religious person yourself, nothing wrong with wearing a hijab. There's something very wrong with forcing someone who is not religious to wear one. But that was Iran once upon a time. Then the Iranian Revolution happened, 1979. Wasn't that simple, though. This guy, that I will presumably pull up in a moment. There we go. This fella. That was the Shah. He was part of the coup in the 50s, I think 53. His name was Pahlavi. Another name I'm sure I'm getting wrong. But by the spelling in the English I am able to speak, his name is Shah Pahlavi. Or rather, his title was Shah, and his last name is Pahlavi. Anyway, he was part of the coup in the 50s that began a lot of, frankly, progressive reforms for Iran. They had 20 years of building progressive societal reforms. This might start to sound eerily familiar to you because during that time, there was a growing distress in the population against the old guard, the traditionalists, who didn't care for those reforms, the religious fundamentalists, who didn't like seeing women not wearing their religious garb. He viewed what he referred to as the White Revolution. Revolution aligning more with the Western forces and Western ideas as a way to preempt the Red Revolution, because the Cold War was in full swing at this time. And he didn't want things to go to the Soviet way of doing things. Now, I disagree with what the Soviets were in actuality. But the unfortunate thing is, what he actually did was pave the way for the Islamic Revolution, where those far-right forces that did not like people living differently than they wanted to live, they took over in 1979. And you don't see pictures of women without hijabs in Iran these days. Until recently. See, that guy, he was the equivalent of a centrist Democrat. He was on the side of the people who were progressive in Iran, but he believed in trickle-down economics, that silly concept where if you give the rich more money, supposedly that money will make its way down to the poor. Didn't work then, hasn't worked ever. The anger, the outrage at that inequity is what the religious fundamentalists were able to take advantage of in order to take over the country. They could blame everything wrong with the country on policies like that and tie them in to people that wouldn't follow the details to simply being Western. The great news is people get sick of oppression. Here's Lawrence O'Donnell with great developments. It's a weird way to say that. Great developments in the country.
Since the September 16th death of Mahsa Amini, who was killed in the custody of Iran's morality police after being arrested for what they said was not properly wearing a headscarf, more than 520 protesters have been killed in Iran, and more than 19,300 have been detained, according to human rights activists in Iran. Nick Kristof reports in the New York Times, one gauge of the hypocrisy of the Iranian regime is that there are credible reports that it is enforcing its supposedly strict moral code by arresting women and girls accused of advocating immodesty and then sexually assaulting them. Iranians understand that gross immorality lies not in a girl's uncovered hair, but in the government that rapes her for it, and they should receive far more international support. Our next guest, Mahsa Ahmadinejad, spoke to Canadian.
I could not agree more with her take just then. And I want to remind you, there's a whole lot of people in the United States of America right now that are advocating for the country to become a theocracy. They are called Christian nationalists, and they want us to be no different than Iran is currently, except instead of a crescent moon, you would see a cross. But the same treatment of women. That is what they're advocating for.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau earlier this week.
We need you. We need your action. Yeah. We have common enemy, common virus, Islamic Republic.
Once upon a time, they went to America with those kinds of requests. We have fallen far.
Joining us now, Mahsa Ahmadinejad. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
What else can you tell us about your discussion with Trudeau?
It was the third anniversary of 176 Iranian Canadians got killed by Iran's Revolutionary Guards. What I said to Justin Trudeau 4 years ago when I was in Canadian Parliament and calling Canadian government to sanction Revolutionary Guards, they didn't. The same Revolutionary Guards killed innocent people after 3 years. And I asked him to put the Revolutionary Guards on the terrorist list. And don't forget, Lawrence, it's not just me. Millions of people calling the free democratic countries to legitimize and recognize the revolution and put the Revolutionary Guards on the terrorist list. Right now, the massive rally is taking place in France, another one in Washington, D.C., which I'm going to join it. And the main demand is the same. Just isolate the Islamic Republic the same way that you isolate Putin.
So I just want to say, it's huge. It's huge. She's on television, which will be seen around the world in one form or another, saying this. And it is so brave. You hear people doing things like this called brave a lot. And the word is used in a number of different ways, and it's usually correct. It's usually an accurate description. But let me be clear about why she is brave in this situation. She could be killed. Just like the farther right America goes, and the more it allows people to just be out Christian nationalists advocating for a theocracy in our country, the more terrorists we have to deal with. Iran's just a little bit farther down that path. Couple years at the pace we're currently going. Think of how dangerous it is to be a trans person in the U.S. right now. We have our version of the Taliban outside of children's storybook reading sessions, just waiting for the police to look the other way for a moment. That's what we have now. She's got to go home to that.
When does this protest become a
because she prefers a flower to a scarf. Madness.
revolution?
The moment when women, shoulder to shoulder with men, started to burn headscarves. You know what?
So it is already a revolution.
It is a
Hell
revolution. Look,
Hell yeah.
the more that the regime kill, the more that people get determined to protest against the regime. The family members of young teenagers who got killed, you know what they say? They turned the funeral into massive rally, and one of the fathers said that this revolution needed blood, and my son sacrificed his life. And I get goosebumps that some teenagers, when I go and check their social media, they wrote before going to the protest, they wrote, many of them, that this might be our last day. One of them said that this land, Iran, didn't give anything to me, but I give my head, I sacrifice my life for my country. So that actually shows you that people are fed up with the Islamic Republic, and this is just the beginning of the end.
We need to take steps in our own country to ensure that that kind of courage is not necessary here, but you better be ready to have it if it ever becomes necessary. Next time there's a Black Lives Matter protest, and by the way, there might be a whole lot soon, you have to go in knowing that domestic violent extremists, as the Department of Homeland Security calls them, also known as terrorists, will use that as an opportunity to attack you. Go anyway. Ask yourself if you can be as brave as an Iranian teenager. You better be. And we should support these people. Again, it's fine if you choose to wear a headscarf. It's not fine to force somebody else to wear one. If they believe it's a superstition, it's simply not part of their religious beliefs, how long does humanity have to go on before we learn this lesson? You cannot force someone else to follow your religion. We should support these people in any way we can. In any way we can.
In a situation where your future is so limited, then this willing to sacrifice, make the highest sacrifice, becomes more possible. And so this dynamic is I don't see what changes in this dynamic going forward. Why would this revolution slow down? I don't see why it would.
No, look, the level of the brutality, it's very intense. I mean, can you believe that the government used like any tactic, raping women in prison right now, hanging people? 50 people are being sentenced to death. 5 of them got executed, and 5 are in the death row. And the regime actually take the family members on TV to denounce their beloved one, make them to do forced confessions. Many young girls and boys being, they lost their eyes. So they use all the tactics to actually stop this revolution. But the revolution itself happened inside people's heart. Mm-hmm. Even those who supported the revolution saying that the Islamic Republic is against our dignity. This is the first time we see sense of unity among Iranians inside and outside. Oppositions are getting united, to have a united front line to tell the rest of the world that this is the time. You have to stand with the people of Iran, not with the murderers.
How clearly is information spread in Iran about what's going on? Do people know who's been arrested, who's going to be executed? Is that information getting out?
That's the problem. Look, the Iranian regime filtered social media to prevent people to take to the streets. But another reason which people are furious, because as you mentioned, it's not easy to get the information, to spread the information. Using social media is a crime. But at the same time, the tech companies allowing Khamenei and his gang of killers to use social media. You know, I cannot believe it. Twitter kicked out President Trump. And people were cheering here in America. But still, Khamenei is enjoying freedom of expression on Twitter. Elon Musk, if you hear me, kick them out. I mean, we need your help to, we need more Starlink in Iran, because it's not easy for people. And another thing is that sending videos to...
I'm going to pause it there for a moment, because this is what you can do. In the description, there is a contact link, or rather, there is a link for finding your representative. Find them, go to their contact page. You just type their name, and it'll pull up their website. You can find the contact for them. Every representative takes calls from their constituents, takes emails from their constituents. Express to them that you want to hear them. You want to hear them demanding that these social media companies boot off Iran's current leaders for the same reason Trump got booted off. Go to your representative. Make this an issue that they have to care about. I'll tell you, it takes about 5 or 6 emails from all their constituents to constitute a big effing deal. They very rarely hear from you and people like you. It matters to them a lot. Do contact them, and do tell them you want Iran's leaders kicked off. You want protections put in place for the Iranian protesters on these major social media companies. If they're going to exist in America and live fat and happy off the tax breaks we, for some reason, choose to keep giving them, all right, they better earn it. Contact your representative. Help that lady out. That lady's risking her life right now. The least you and I can do, write a damn email.
Journalists like me, activists like me outside Iran, is a crime. It's a crime. But at the same time, we see that CNN give platform to Iranian officials, to not just CNN, many media. But at the same time, if Iranian activists, journalists do interview with media abroad, they will go to prison. So this is, and I have to say, this is a war. Unfair.
It is.
People don't have guns and bullets. The regime, they have guns and bullets, power, money, media, everything. But people are not going to give up. All we need just support from the leaders of G7. Kick out the Islamic Republic diplomats.
Absolutely.
And recall the ambassadors when you see that innocent teenagers are getting executed for the crime of peacefully protesting.
Yeah. I mean, you cannot treat this country, Iran, like it is, like it's acting decently day to day. They are killing their people over a desire to not wear a head garment. That's insane. They're killing their people over not following what they believe, the people believe, to be superstition. It's that simple. If you are a devout Islamic individual, if you're a traditional Muslim, and you do believe in every tenet of Islam as interpreted by the government of Iran, okay, you do that for you. but you know it's wrong. And I don't think I have heard, I don't want to speak for other people, but I have not heard in my experience any Muslim suggesting that others should be forced to live as they live. Because that's not how you run a country. Time and time again, we see what theocracy becomes, and it is brutal. You can help. Contact your representative. She just laid out her demands. It comes down to, do not have the G7 accept the diplomats from Iran until this behavior stops. And at a minimum, protesters are simply allowed to protest. But also tell them you want to hear them speak out about this issue, because it should be important to you. We should not let that woman stand alone against a brutal regime. Stand with her. She can risk her life. You can write an email. I can write an email. That's what I'm doing tonight. My poor representative hears from me often. Hopefully yours will hear from you. Links in the description. Got a palate cleanser for you. My man Keith Olbermann has had an interesting career. He's been a sports guy. He wound up being a political commentator. I think he was on GQ for a while. And he just came out with a video that is something I could not agree with more. He says Merrick Garland must go. It's a quick one. Let's have a listen.
Merrick Garland must resign, and if he won't, Joe Biden must fire him. Not because Garland appointed a special counsel, that will probably work to Biden's advantage, but because somebody at Garland's Department of Justice leaked the story of this entire investigation, and because Garland first entrusted this entire investigation to a Trump appointee, and now he has entrusted this entire investigation to a different Trump appointee.
Okay, so two things right off the bat. He's put a lot fast there. I appreciate it, but let's break it down. So, step one, why did we even know about the documents investigation with Biden? Remember, in a previous video, I told you we only knew about the documents investigation with Trump because Mar-a-Lago got raided. And then Trump put out a statement to the public. We didn't know that he had stolen documents till he said so. Now, whether you agree with it or not, it's because that's the way it's generally handled with the Department of Justice. How come we knew about the Biden documents investigation? Because the Department of Justice handled Biden differently than Trump. Trump is a conservative. They get the kid gloves. Biden is, well, he is a conservative, but he's on the side. He's a moderate Democrat. Meaning they don't get the kid gloves. So Garland assigns this to a Trump appointee. That is what you do when you are trying to please Trump fans. Why is Merrick Garland trying to please anybody? Are we going to pretend like Donald Trump did wise appointments? Donald Trump only cared about himself. He has made that clear. Pretending otherwise is nonsense. I believe Merrick Garland should have been fired when, after a year and a half, we didn't have any progress, at least publicly known, on the investigations into Trump's many crimes, into the things in the Mueller report from 2019 that Robert Mueller said Trump could get indicted for. He said there was nothing preventing the Department of Justice of doing that once he left office. So, when we hit 2022 and there were elections wherein people who were involved, apparently, in the fake electors plot were allowed to be on the ballot. Because there were no indictments, were elected in some cases. The lieutenant governor of Georgia, right now, the lieutenant governor of Georgia is one of the people who was apparently involved in the fake electors plot. Yes, we should have canned Merrick Garland a while ago. I will let Mr. Olbermann finish.
As special counsel. And this guy has his own page on the website of the Federalist Society. Merrick Garland must go, not because he's corrupt, but because he's an idiot. All that and more on the Friday podcast for Countdown, available now wherever you podcast.
I like Keith. I like that he doesn't mince words, certainly not in that YouTube short. But yeah, I mean, no notes for Mr. Olbermann, good Lord, for Keith. No notes. Garland's got to go. He's an ineffective attorney general. He is exactly what I would expect a Democrat to a point. He is feckless. He just has no courage, and he has no understanding of the purpose of his being there. He confuses pleasing people with being fair. I feel like he's got to go. There is a route you can take, however, if you're interested in justice and you don't think that it's very likely that Joe Biden, the centrist of the centrists, is likely to replace Merrick Garland. State investigations have been opened into Donald Trump. There are 2 state investigations regarding election tampering, which Trump did in 2020. Look at the list I included. If you're from one of the 5 states in that list, your attorney general could choose to pursue charges, state charges, against Donald Trump, which, by the way, would make us immune from getting Trump rescued by a dumbass Democrat president who would try to give him a pardon. Seems insane. I wouldn't put it past him. Let's make that not even an option. Use the list, contact your AG, say you want state charges filed against Donald Trump for the elector plot. Rather, specifically, you want an investigation opened, a state investigation, because you do not trust that Merrick Garland will protect your vote. He's already demonstrated that he won't, because the 2022 election came and went. Trump has announced he's running for president again. We've yet to see the indictment on anything. Get to it. That is what you can do. If you are from Michigan or Georgia, I do recommend you write them anyway, your attorney general, and you tell them, good job. It's worth encouraging them too. Fire and ice. Well, this has been WYCD Wicked. That stands for What You Can Do. I've been your old pal Jake. I'll see you next time.